Hello, world. What is up? Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Matt Forte. We're here live at the Build studio in New York City. Mary, Queen of Scots explores the turbulent life of the charismatic Mary Stuart, Queen of France at 16 and widowed at 18. Mary defies pressure to remarry, and instead, she returns to her native Scotland to reclaim her rightful throne. But Scotland and England fall under the rule of the compelling Elizabeth I. The film expertly examines the two queens simultaneously ruling in rival neighboring countries and reinterprets that history in a feminist light, something director Josie Rourke has been doing for years on stage, and in this, her directorial debut finally brings to the screen. Joining me here shortly from Mary, Queen of Scots, I have stars Joe Alwyn's here, Jack Lowden is here, and director Josie Rourke is in the building. How about that, everybody? Come on, that's pretty awesome. We're going to bring them out in just a second, but first, I believe we have a trailer for the film, so let's go ahead and run that clip. Oh, man, ladies and gentlemen, make some noise. Josie Rourke, Jack Lowden, Joe Alwyn are here. Come on. Wow. Congratulations. I was saying it backstage. I got a chance to see this film yesterday, and it was phenomenal. It blew me away.
Thank you.
So well done. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about it, talk about making it, talk about the story behind it and all that. We'll get to that in a moment. How are you guys doing? How's life right now? How's press going? How are you holding up? How are you?
Can I just say, this is actually a pinnacle of my existence, because when I was a kid growing up in England, we had one breakfast TV show where people could wander past, like in the street. Yeah, it was called This Morning, and it was gigantic. It was in Liverpool, which is about 50 miles from where I grew up. And my entire ambition up until today has been to be on a show where there can be people outside wandering past and you can see the street. I mean, for me, this is it. Forget making a major motion picture. I've arrived.
You've done it. Yeah. Applause, please. This is it, guys. We're here for the moment.
So press is going great. Thank you. I don't know about these guys.
That is so amazing. Well, it's so funny because I was going to say this must be a wild ride. I saw you were in the director's roundtable, and you've been, again, it must be said, you've been doing phenomenal work for years on stage, but this is your film debut. This is your directorial debut, your first film, and I was watching this roundtable, and you're sitting there with Alfonso Cuarón and Spike Lee and stuff. I was like, that had to be a surreal moment for you to be sitting there.
Okay, so Spike Lee laughed at one of my jokes and punched me in the arm, and I was like, okay, I could just die now. I'm so happy. No, it was amazing. I mean, it's amazing. And because I don't know Los Angeles very well, I've mainly done theatre in London, and we were shooting it in this kind of $15 million Bel Air mansion, so it couldn't have had more of a dreamlike quality. I actually, just before we started, had to run outside and call my mum so she could take the piss out of me for a bit, so I could just normalise before I began. Yeah, it's been incredible.
Keep you close to earth on that.
Yeah.
Joe, I saw you were doing Kelly and Ryan. That must have been fun. That looked like a good time.
It was fun, yeah. I'd never done a live chat show before, so that was the first one, actually. Yeah.
This is live, too.
Yes.
You're live.
You're
live.
But like a morning show. I've never done a morning show.
It's fun to
This
make
is
sure
the morning
you do
as well, I
that.
suppose.
I didn't know if that factors into how you respond or...
Well, then I have done them before, I guess. I don't know. I did do that, yeah. It was great. It was cool.
Well, that's fantastic, and again, congratulations. I'm just so excited you guys are here and able to talk to us about it. So let's get into it. Josie, I'd love to start with you. As we've already pointed out, this is the directorial debut. This is the first film. What went into the decision to this story? Why did you land here? Why Mary, Queen of Scots?
Sure. So the main attraction really was, so there's this thing in England where actually a lot of our film directors tend to come from theatre. So Working Title, who are the producers on the movie along with Focus, had been talking to me about a couple of projects, and then they said, what about Mary, Queen of Scots? And Saoirse Ronan is attached to it. And, my recommendation to anybody is, if you ever find anything with Saoirse Ronan attached, just, grab that and do it. So, yeah, totally. So wanting to work with Saoirse, I knew this period of history pretty well because I've done a lot of plays set in this time or written in this time, and so I felt a degree of comfort in it. But also I really wanted to reinvestigate our idea of Mary as a woman, and also Elizabeth, who Margot Robbie plays in the movie, and just see if we could give that a kind of 21st century spin and look at it with some of the things that we now understand actually a little better about their actual history. It's based on a great book by John Guy that really tries to take Mary seriously. History said she was led by emotion, not by sound judgment. And actually, I don't think that was the case. So we're trying to sort of get the fake news out of Mary's history and put her back on the map.
It's a very appropriate and timely term to use and take the fake news out of it. It's so funny because a lot of the commentary surrounding the film is this is such a movie for 2018. This is such a 2018 movie. But as we've said before, you've been doing these kinds of stories for a while. Like you've been telling these kind of stories for a long time. Well, how do you feel now that the sort of societal conversation has caught up to the work that you've been doing? What is that?
I think that's a really smart way of putting it, because you're right. I've been, doing stories with St. Joan in them. Jack and I just did a play together in London where he flipped out his role with a woman, Hayley Atwell, who was playing opposite him. So I've always been looking to tell and retell women's stories and find new perspectives for them. So in a way, it feels a bit more like 2018 is looking differently in my stuff rather than I'm looking differently at 2018.
It's a cool way to put it. Joe and Jay, how'd you guys get involved with this? How'd you become a part of the film?
In a pretty conventional way.
Yeah.
I was sent the script to read, and I loved it. And I went and chatted with Josie about it, and talked about it for a bit, and read a scene or two, and came about like that.
When you were looking at it, when you say you loved it, what was there anything specific that jumped out? As in, oh, this is a great opportunity for me to try this as an actor, or I really want to explore this.
It was more as a whole package. I thought I'd seen Josie's work in the theatre before, and really, really admired her. I loved Working Title. I knew that Saoirse was involved. Also, as reading period dramas, they can often be, I haven't read a huge amount, but they can often be quite kind of rigid and stuffy and formal. And the way that Beau had written it, it just felt different and alive and refreshing and relevant. And it was just an exciting prospect.
Sure. Jack?
Anything that's made about Scotland, I sort of go out of the way to try and make sure I'm, either passing by the window or in the room in some way. So 100% and unashamedly, it was initially because it was something about Scotland and the history of Scotland that I have an absolute fascination with. That is
Although you're playing an Englishman.
Although I played an Englishman. It was interesting. It was quite fun to be on the sort of enemy side, so to speak. And a film that I think, like you said, it obviously deals with quite a lot of things that are very, very pertinent to today. But the really unique relationship that the two countries have and still have. Is something that I always love when it's explored, because they are, as is mentioned in the film, so lovely put. They are sisters, and quite often there has been a bigger sister in that relationship and a bit of a bully. So it's quite nice to see it sort of shrunken down into these rooms where these conversations happen in very, very cold rooms, and people have a lot of arguments. And it's extraordinary how an entire populations and countries are sort of decided. It is remarkable when you think about it, in these tiny rooms with big fireplaces.
Yeah. Tiny Rooms with Big Fire is the alternate title of the film, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Tiny
we did look at that and tested it, but it just didn't work as well as Mary Queen of Scots. No.
Communicate it in the same way as Mary Queen of Scots. The story of Mary and Elizabeth and their tug of war is something that has been told a lot of different times, a lot of different ways over the years. Was that something? Did any of you return to any of those prior versions? Did you avoid those versions going in? How did you navigate the existence of that content?
Sure. Very near the beginning of the process, so before Beau had sort of rested his fingers on the keyboard and started to type, I checked in again with the Elizabeth movies, and there's a Catherine Hepburn, Mary Queen of Scots, John Ford directed and it's kind of, so there's a long history of it, but not so much. There's actually a really cool play that was running in London, which is about Mary and Elizabeth nearer to Mary's execution, so toward the end of their life, that I actually watched a couple of times while I was thinking about it, and that had been revived on Broadway by Janet McTeer and Harriet Walter about 10 years previously, and that's quite famous. It's like sort of the most famous German play. It's like the greatest part a German actress can play. So as a theatre director, I was aware of that and engaged with that a little bit, yeah.
What about you guys? Did you revisit any of the existing stuff? How familiar were you with the story? I know you were saying anything history-wise for Scotland, you're there, but this story in particular, how familiar were you guys with it going in?
I was familiar in the sense that she is, Mary in particular, certainly in Scotland, is held up as a very romantic but always / tragic figure. And I mean, it's hard to grow up in Scotland and not become aware of her, but also at the same time, it's hard to grow up in Scotland and not be aware of Elizabeth I, who was, you know, by far and away one of the most successful English monarchs. And I mean, I didn't look at anything in particular before we did this film, you know, and I think the great joy of doing a period film. I've done a lot of period stuff. I think you inevitably do when you grow up in the UK. The great joy of it is that there's so much of the work is done for you with costume, landscape, language, everything. You know, it's all done for you, and I think it becomes more of a hobby to sort of and a joy to chuck yourself into, you know, some of the reading material and things like that. But at the end of the day, I think it's 100% just your job to try and play human beings and let the roughs and stuff do all the other stuff.
Yeah, that's both of you have been several period pieces and projects and work on it before, and something that comes part and parcel with that is this world building that's already been done, but now your job is to recreate that world, and something that, even though it wasn't that long ago, might as well be alien to us from an aesthetic standpoint. But yeah, there's these long conversations in these tiny rooms with big fireplaces, and they're very human. Was it difficult to sort of find for you two the human qualities in these somewhat, I don't want to say deplorable characters, but the men, there are redeeming qualities, but they're difficult characters, I think, for you guys to play. I came close to not hating one of yours, but mostly them. And I was, you know, watching this film, and I was talking about this earlier. It's not a sense of like, oh, it's a feminist movie, all the men are bad. No, a lot of these men, they're human, and they were just bad people, and this is just what it was like, and this was the culture back then.
Yeah, this is when politics, as we think of it in a contemporary sense, was invented. You know, like when we call things Machiavellian now, when we say manipulative, you know, Machiavelli wrote that book during this period, that like handbook of how to. Yeah, that's the guy who said it's better to be feared than loved. You know, it's lots of, you know, you've got Beau Willimon who wrote House of Cards, obviously writing the scripts. There's a lot of that in it. Yeah. In terms of sympathy, I don't know. I'd have to leave these gentlemen to answer that question, but yeah.
I think it's one like there would obviously be like a tendency, I think, with what's happening right now, and where, you know, where women are quite rightly so are in more lead roles, and they need to be in more. And especially with something like this with two queens, there could be a tendency to make this film where any mistake that's made in this film, it's never either of the two girls' fault. It's always the men's fault. And what I love about the film is that even though, like you said, they are surrounded by men who make a hell of a lot of mistakes and are sometimes horrible, sometimes useless, is that Josie and Beau still allowed both Elizabeth and Mary to make mistakes of their own in the film. Mary for marrying Darnley, you know, it was one of the gravest mistakes she made. You know, through we don't know, through it could have just been lust, it could have been love, or it could have been for political benefits. But that is one of the biggest mistakes. And what I love about the film is that it isn't just a bunch of useless men surrounding two very, very, very capable women. That you're still allowed to see these women make mistakes, and I think that's very important. That you do let people make mistakes, and it's I think it's extraordinary. I really do think it's amazing, the film, for that reason alone, is that the two characters still make mistakes of their own, and it isn't just the men are all bad, and when women are in
Exactly, it's complex. There's layers to it. There's a lot more to it. Were you gonna say something, Joe?
No, I was just going to say, I think of my character actually differs from the other men. He's a bit of an outsider in the sense that he isn't driven by kind of politics and power and his own personal ambition in the way that the others are, but he's kind of the one beacon-ish of true loyal love, at least in this depiction.
He's as close as you get to a good.
Yeah,
I think that's right, and something quite modern in that, you know, I think he understands that to love this woman means that you need to be in a deal with her.
Yeah.
Because she's very clear what the terms are, and actually that he's prepared to be in that deal. I think in this reading of Dudley in the movie is greatly to his credit. Mm-hmm. You know, it's too easy to say there's one good guy, but you know, I think there's something deeply honourable about him.
Yeah, for sure. It is criminal that we've gotten this far into the conversation and not have talked about, of course, Saoirse and Margot and what they do and the work they put in and what you all achieved together in this film. Just were they a part of it from the beginning? I know you said Saoirse was attached. Did Margot come on shortly after, or?
So Saoirse was attached, and Beau and I met with her and thought really hard about her when we were writing the script. And we had this great Elizabeth character, and then I pursued Margot to do it. So I flew out to Los Angeles. She kindly met me shortly before leaving for her honeymoon. And actually, initially, she said no. She's got enormous humility, and she's like, Kate Blanchett's my hero. How can I possibly do this? And she and I went on what was actually a really beautiful journey together with me, I suppose, using my skills as a theatre director to say, this is how you get to this part. And, you know, I want you to play a woman, not a queen, and let's find the humanity in it. And she felt she knew how to do that. And thank goodness she came on board.
That's interesting. So your experience, your wealth of experience in theater was informing just how you approach this whole process before you even got on a set and before you even started, like, literally directing and doing all that stuff.
And there's rehearsal and there's prep as well. So I think you kind of work out what any actor might want or need in terms of background reading, deep conversation with you, research, and then we were lucky enough to have 2 weeks rehearsal that was really crucial in that world-building thing you were talking about before, because this is a complex time and everybody needs to know what they think about everybody else before they're thrown onto a set with them.
Guys, talk about working with these two powerhouses that we have here and what that experience was like for you.
Yeah, I mean, they're both completely amazing and phenomenal, and not only very, very talented, but really great people. I feel lucky that we had the 2 week rehearsal period, because it was in some sense a film of two halves, and that we shot the English stuff in the first few weeks, and then everyone went up north to Scotland. So I obviously I didn't cross over with Saoirse as much, obviously, as Jack did, but my bits were mainly with Margot. But yeah, and you know, she is. You've seen the film. She's brilliant. She completely disappears. She's someone who's so recognizable to us in life, but she completely disappears vocally, physically. The makeup, costume. She's phenomenal.
Do you remember the first time you saw her in that transformation in that?
I saw her in the makeup trailer, and I didn't know it was her. I remember she was kind of covered in pox scars, and I thought it was someone they were doing a test on, and I didn't even meet her then. And I met her the next day. Yeah.
Wow. What about Jack? What about working with Saoirse?
It was remarkable working with Saoirse. The woman is a force of nature on and off screen, and utterly fearless and a brilliant leader as well. For being 24 years old, it's just constantly amazing to me. Not just her work, but how she is on a set is amazing, and she really did lead it. And you know, there was scenes in particular with her where, you know, it's a very weird relationship that Darnley and Mary have. It's one that's sort of instantly poisonous, and I felt that Saoirse and Josie obviously, but Saoirse in the playing of it gave me license, you know, quite a few times to really poke and prod at what was a very strange relationship, and the one scene in particular with her and I, where she demands an heir from me, you know, and Darnley finds himself in that unique position for a man of that time, where his sole purpose suddenly becomes to produce an heir, which and the scene in which that happens in the film. Saoirse was utterly fearless in how she wanted to make it, you know, not that classic thing where a man comes in and gets annoyed and drunk and has his way with the queen. Right. That she really pushes him in to producing an heir, and I think it's a remarkable scene, and was completely led by her fearlessness. Yeah. She's remarkable.
Absolutely. You know, speaking of remarkable scenes, this whole film, a lot of the energy is driven toward, is pushing you towards that moment where you do get to see them interact with one another. Even, it's not a documentary. I don't care if it happened or didn't happen. It's amazing to see.
It didn't happen.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's so you do a lot of reading, and some people are like, "Oh, that scene it never took place." Blah, blah. It doesn't matter. Have you seen these two together? Like, that's, and the interaction they have and they play. And I'm curious for you the why it was important to have that scene, to have that moment with these two together, coming together.
And I think you're right about the cultural importance of that scene. You know, that meeting of the two queens. You know, Helen Mirren's played that scene. You know, Katharine Hepburn's played that scene. Eileen Atkins has met Vanessa Redgrave in that scene. That scene is a mountain for two actors of their stature to climb, you know, and there's a tradition of that. So did not happen historically. It sits in our great dramatic tradition, I think. And, you know, that was the whole pitch for the movie. And both Margot and Saoirse say that's the scene they were most looking forward to shooting. And for me, what was tremendously important, you know, just to pick up on what Jack's saying, is the fearlessness and lack of vanity and degree of risk matched with extraordinary skill and ability in these two incredible young women just catches on fire in that scene. That was my greatest day as a director. On stage, on set, in a rehearsal room, anywhere.
Once you know that you have that locked in, and you're so lucky to have that lightning in a bottle, these two people together, does that alleviate some of the pressure of having to now direct and create this moment, this mountain that they've been looking forward to so much, is a tradition within the dramatic world, and now it's your responsibility to live up to those standards and live up to that tradition? Was it a little easier and a little less scary because you know you had those two there?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think I'm very motivated by both responsibility and the kind of dare of something. So for a first movie, this is a kind of go big or go home proposition. You know, it's a battle scene, there are mountains in it, there are horses, there's, you know, a lot of big stuff. And I think that I found that incredibly exciting. Like, one of my best friends says to me that the best way to motivate me to do something is to tell me that I can't. And so I think just being driven by the ambition and the scale, and just as a, you know, a woman, first-time director, like, let's just go and do this, that pushed me forward. But it would have been impossible without these amazing actors around me. You know, I was heavily reliant on their skill, ability, and common sense and judgment to get me through that movie.
Well, I mean, you've gone big. You know, you made Spike Lee laugh, and you got people walking behind you right now. So
all happening.
You've done it. It's all come together. You have this phenomenal film. We're going to turn it over to audience Q&A, guys. Take some questions. The first one's going to come from a Twitter watcher. We have at Elishteen. I'm sorry. Elishiten. That's your Twitter name. And they've asked, for Jack, what's the best part about filming in Scotland?
Getting to go to some of my favourite service stations. Do you know what service stations are? Yeah.
Like a gas station.
Yeah,
gas station.
Yeah,
I have a fascination about service stations. Really? Yes, I just think that's where all life is its service stations. And I've been very fortunate enough to shoot now three films in Scotland. I've been very lucky to do that. And during every one of them, I've been. I have a car, and I love driving myself. I hate being driven around. I just love driving myself, and I just love driving. And so whenever I've got like a morning before I have to be at unit base before shooting, I always drive and try and find a service station. It's bizarre, but that is genuinely my favourite thing.
Can I ask Jack a follow-up? Did you take your washing home to your mum and dad on the weekend?
Yeah, all the time. Loads. Yeah, and of course, I mean, that's another great thing. Probably should have said that first.
Hang on, I want to explore this service station thing just a little bit more.
I remember we were shooting up north, and I think you turned up later that day, and I took a picture out my window, and it was just like grey and bleak service station, car park. I was like, look where we are. And you texted me back being like, that's amazing. I can't wait. That's awful.
Now, is this unique to when you're home and when you're in Scotland? Have you explored the American service stations?
I have not, no.
You have not? Okay, cool. Let's keep going. I'm stopping this entire show so we can go down this line of questioning here. Is there a particular snack or food item at the service station that you love to get? Is there?
So in the UK, pork pies are a service station favourite.
Would you microwave a hamburger?
Yeah, I would. I would if I was in a hurry. I certainly would, but pork pies for sure. They now have instant coffee machines in the service stations in the UK, which is a revelation. Which is just, I think it's the way forward. But there was, you're right that no.
Please, could people tweet Jack Lowden with the great American service stations that he should visit, and we could do like a route map, and I will make a documentary of that. That's like a straight offer. We'll just
I think they're very. I think
Joe, you'll go with him. It's gonna be amazing. Yeah.
I think they're very romantic places, man. I think it's like they're the great crossroads of life.
You do see everyone in them.
I just see like a tight shot of the rotating hot dog on the little wheel, and then Jack's face slowly rising in the background.
Yeah.
It's a maze. This is it. This is the future.
They are incredible. And there was one in particular in Aviemore in Scotland where we were shooting for quite a long time. There was one just outside the town where I was there all the time.
Okay, so I fell down a grid in that service station while we were doing a recce. Yeah,
See?
I did, yeah.
All
yeah.
life.
Like, I managed to go all the way up a big mountain and come down again and like jump across rivers and not injure myself at all. And I'm walking across the service station car park with probably a microwaved hamburger and fall in a grid.
Great.
Yeah, yeah.
That is amazing. Well, obviously, while I could keep asking you questions about this, we'll go back to the audience. We've got a few more coming our way. Next one, come right on down.
Hi. Question to all of you. What was the most interesting historical discovery you have made working on this movie?
Most interesting historical discovery? What did you discover about Darnley that was the most
Yeah, what
interesting?
did you learn while you're doing this?
Yeah.
So I said this the other day, that he was famously described as the lustiest and best proportioned long man that Mary had ever seen. And so that was a particular favourite of mine. And so I put a lot of work into being as long as I possibly could. And I think I look quite long in the
You do?
film.
We cut your clothes so you look
did,
long.
yeah,
we
you did,
totally
yeah.
did, yeah.
That's one of the things I thought while I was watching.
Yeah.
That man's got a lot of length. Look.
Guy's long.
Yeah.
The genuine description of Lord Darnley.
Yeah. So I found Elizabeth was frightened of the dark. And yeah, she was actually very, understandably, she was locked up in the Tower of London, feared for her life. In this movie, she's only 3 years into her reign, so she's still legitimately paranoid, I think. And there's an amazing thing about privacy in that period. So you can probably see like Mary's bedchamber looks a bit like a kind of dorm room, and all of the Maries, who are the 4 women around her called Mary, all slept in that same room as her. And Elizabeth slept with her women as well. They were never alone. And that idea of privacy, which is so strange to us, I found really fascinating and quite helpful detail for the film.
I found it useful. I didn't know that Dudley's relationship with Elizabeth, how they had a bond of friendship they were friends since childhood, and in fact they spent time together in the Tower of London in prison. And so the idea that they had this kind of bond and connection that preceded her becoming queen was quite an interesting idea to work out where maybe this loyalty and love stemmed from.
That's a great question. Thank you for that. We've got 2 more coming our way. Next one will be right over here as well. Come on
Are
down.
they about service stations?
Okay, first of all, congratulations on the movie. The movie is really amazing and very entertaining. I actually didn't even look at my watch watching it, so it was really good.
It's a big endorsement.
Really, really good. Very entertaining.
Put that on the poster. Yeah.
This question is actually for Joe. You were actually involved in the 2 English historical and period movies this season. I was just curious about your experience, the similarities and differences in filming both.
So that's with Mary Queen of Scots and The Favourite. They were very, very different experiences and very different films. The easiest point of comparison, I suppose, is we were lucky enough in both to have a 2-week rehearsal period before each one, and both kind of rehearsal periods fitted the tone of the film and the approach of the film perfectly. So with Josie and her theatre background, we were lucky enough to be able to read scenes and talk about characters and intentions and motivations and get to know all the actors and talk with a historian and really kind of dive deep into it in a way that felt appropriate to what we then made. And with Yorgos's film, which is slightly more crazed,
It's a fantastic film. You're so great in it. I've not
thank
said to
you.
you. It's really brilliant.
Thanks. It's quite. I don't know if you've seen it. It's quite. All right. It's mad. And so the rehearsal period, we were tying each other up with our bodies and switching parts and rolling around the floor and singing and tickling each other, and no discussion about the period or the films or the period of the time and the characters and the intentions. We were actively discouraged to look into the history of it. He didn't want us to get caught up in a kind of academic mindset, which really suited the tone of the film. You've seen it. There wasn't kind of a need there in the same way.
I've got a massive nerd fact about those 2 films, which is quite cool. So the house that you shot in, Hatfield House, yeah. Well, Elizabeth was there, but also that house has sat in the Cecil family for generations and generations. So that house used to be owned by William Cecil, who Guy Pearce plays in Mary Queen of Scots, and is now owned by the Marquis of Salisbury, Robert Cecil.
Yeah, he still lives
and that's
there.
an unbroken line, yeah.
That is
Yeah, I
really
know,
cool
isn't
little
that
bit of
crazy? Yeah.
information.
My top fact.
And there are more bunny rabbits in The Favourite. Yeah.
Any fantastic service station stories from the set of The Favourite while you were over there? No, you guys?
Man, we're gonna go, man. You and me together.
Not yet, but I'll get there.
We'll get you there.
We'll
All
go
right,
together.
fantastic. What do I got? One more? Oh, wonderful. Let's go ahead, do it up, bring it on
Hi.
down.
First of all, I have to say that I really recommend the Massachusetts service stations on the way to Boston. Really great
This is great.
variety
Yeah.
of different stuff.
Yeah. We need a big map. We need like
Lot
a
of
big
really good
map.
ones, yeah.
Yeah, we've got one.
Thank you.
We'll get
You're
one.
welcome. And then this question is actually from our website. Alexis wants to know what's next for all of you in terms of projects.
Yeah, where are you going now?
We just did a play together, but that finished on Saturday.
We literally just did a play together, Josie and I. We did Measure for Measure Shakespeare. He writes a great play, so so we did that. Literally finished that on Saturday night in London. And I'm desperate to do more stage work because I just love it there. It's great.
I just finished filming something about 3 days ago in Virginia, a film about Harriet Tubman with Cynthia Erivo, who plays Harriet, and I don't know what's next. We'll find out.
So I've.
I hope.
Sorry, darling, don't interrupt you. Sorry. Cynthia's so cool. She was so Cynthia was in a show at the theatre that I run in London a few years ago. Yeah. And I've been artistic director there, actually coming up for 8 years. So I stepped down in the spring, and I'll do a big farewell show, not yet disclosed. But then after that, I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see. Yeah. Hopefully another film, someone will let me do one. We'll see.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you guys so much for taking time to come and hang out with us and be here on our stage and on our show. Congratulations on this wonderful film. Thank you to you guys for being an awesome audience. Those are great questions. Right now, I have select theaters December 7th, Mary Queen of Scots. But December, this is the month to see this fantastic film. If you haven't already, do yourself a favor, get out there and see it. One more time, everybody make a ridiculous amount of noise, please, for Josie Rourke, Joe Alwyn, and Jack Lowden. Come on.
Thank you.
There you go.